As we use inventory management models like the economic order quantity model and the economic order quantity model with stochastic demand, we're going to need some measures, like we're going to need to know total sales for different SKUs. We're going to need to know average daily sales and standard deviation of sales. And so what this tutorial is about is how to get those measures in Power BI for a large array of SKUs. For example, to calculate Q star, the optimal number of units to order, to know that, we have to know the value of D, which is the total demand for the good in any one year. Likewise, if it's an economic order quantity model with stochastic demand, we need to know S star, which is the level at which inventories fall to, which triggers a new reorder. To know that, we have to know the average daily demand, mu there, and we also have to know the standard deviation of daily demand. And to get that from the SKUs in Power BI is what this tutorial is all about. This is where we're starting from. You should have three data sets there: customer info, a calendar, automatic calendar table. That sales by SKU table you will not have. That's just something I have extra. And then a master data file for your sales. We're going to go there and we're going to create a new measure. This new measure is going to be total sales. This is just saying we just type this formula and it says that the measure is measuring total sales, and then you'll see we can use that measure in a lot of different ways. And that's what it looks like when you're done making a measure. It'll have the calculator beside it. In addition to total sales, we want to measure that's average sales per day. So we're going to make sure we've chosen our sales data file, and we're going to create a new measure. And this new measure is going to be called average sales per day. And to make this measure, we're going to use something called an average X function. The average X function lets you take an average over certain variable values, and the values here is going to be taking averages all over is the calendar date, each individual day within a calendar year. So we're saying we want to average over dates, and what we want to average over each date is total sales. Point out something in this formula, make sure you understand it. So what this function is saying is telling Power BI to take an average of total sales, but total sales for each day of the year. So it's going to give us average sales per day. If in the formula, instead of saying calendar date, it is said calendar year, then it will calculate average sales for each year, average yearly sales, as opposed to average sales every day. I also want to stop right here and emphasize why we need that automated calendar that we made in another video. Let's assume that the sales data had no sales recorded for February 5th, 2022. Now, on that day, sales were 0, and the value of 0 should be included in the average. But only with that automated calendar will that happen. If you didn't have the automated calendar, it would be like the day February 5th, 2022 didn't exist, because it doesn't exist in the sales data, but of course it will exist in the automated calendar. Let's go ahead and see what some of these data look like. We're going to go back to report, and instead of making a figure, we're going to make a table. We're going to use a matrix table. Expand it here, and what we're going to do is for our values, we want average sales per day. That's the values we're wanting to see. And then for our rows, we want the SKU. So we want average sales per day for every SKU. And you can see that's what it's showing us. Well, remember that in addition to average sales per day, we want the standard deviation of sales per day. We haven't made that yet, so we're going to make that as one of our new measures. We're going to make sure we're in the sales data. We're going to go to new measure, and we're going to have a similar formula to what we had for average sales per day, but instead of Average X is going to be something similar, SDDEVX. And I'm choosing the .S for a standard deviation for a sample, not a population. And this class will always use standard deviations for samples, not populations. And now that I have that measure built, I'm going to add it to my table. And there we go. Now our table has for each SKU the average sales per day and the standard deviation of sales per day. There's one more measure we need though. Remember in the formula there's that big D that stands for average sales per year, the total amount of sales we expect for each year. We're going to add that now. And we don't have it as a measure yet, and what we're going to do is we're going to go to our automated calendar. We don't need a new measure for this. What we need is a new field in calendar. And just like we already have a field for that tells us what month each sales takes place, now we need a column for the year. And so we're just going to call this column year. We use the function that's also called year, and with inside the brackets we put the automated calendar. And then it's going to spit out the year in which each individual sales took place. Now that we have our year column, now we can go ahead and make our new measure. That's going to be average sales each year. We're choosing our sales data, going to new measure, and we're going to do a formula very similar to the average daily sales, except now it's going to be average yearly sales. And the formula is going to be, like I mentioned earlier, it's going to be very similar, except instead of calendar date, we're going to use the values of calendar year. And again, we're looking at the total sales for each year in the calendar. And now our table is going to be complete because now we'll have average yearly sales for each SKU in addition to average daily sales and the standard deviation. Our inventory models are going to be in a spreadsheet, so what we want to do now is export these data, and we're going to export them into a text file, and then later we will read the text file into an Excel document. So I'm going to give it a name here that will make sense to me later. Now I'm going to go to my File Explorer or Finder and open up that data just to make sure that it looks right. Save this spreadsheet as something like inventory models, and then I'm going to import my data, import that text file that I made in Power BI, import it into Microsoft Excel, and yeah, that looks right. We have average sales per day, the SKU, standard deviation of daily sales, and average yearly sales. And these data are going to give me everything I need to calculate Q star and S star for each SKU in some inventory management models.